Welcome to today's episode where we shine a light with the transformative power of adoption with Rebecca Gruenspan, founder and CEO of RG Adoption Consulting. Did you know that over 135,000 children are adopted in the United States every single year, making adoption a powerful force in shaping families? With a passion for social work and a decade of experience in the adoption field, Rebecca is on a mission to help individuals and families realize their dreams of parenthood ethically and efficiently. Drawing from her personal journey of adopting her son, Rebecca brings a unique perspective and deep empathy to her work. Through RG Adoption Consulting, she has built a thriving business that offers invaluable resources, support, and guidance to individuals and families of all backgrounds across the nation. Join us as we dive into Rebecca's inspiring story, her commitment to building a supportive adoption community, and the profound impact of adoption on families and children. Get ready for an enlightening conversation filled with heart, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. Welcome, Rebecca. So I'm really excited to have you here because I don't know how many people know this, but we've also adopted. We did adopt from foster care versus private adoption. But gosh, could I have used you along that journey? I think having that support system to navigate all of the there's a lot that goes into an adoption.
There is.
So a lot of emotions that go into adoption.
Yeah.
Having somebody helping you and holding your hand and guiding you through that without an emotional reaction is super, super helpful, I think. So let's dive in and discover the sparks that created the unique opportunities along your entrepreneurial path. Can you share a bit about your journey? I think it's from social work and adoption and then to entrepreneurship and how it all came together.
Yeah. And I was actually working in the nonprofit world too, right before I jumped into this. But I have always wanted to be a mom. I just knew that was one of my callings. It was not a question. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen for me. And of course, my life was on track. I had it all planned out. I was going to be a mom in my early 20s and all the things. And then if there's one thing I learned in this whole journey, it's that you really can't plan out your life. If you think it's going to go, might not be how it ends up. And that's okay. You have to pivot, right? But long story short, I dated and it just hasn't happened for me yet still. And I thought I have to figure this out on my own. And so I did the whole fertility thing and that didn't work. And so I grieved that because I had this whole dream of carrying a baby. And then I moved into adoption. But people thought I was crazy to set out to adopt on my own as a single mom. And I used to tell them, it might be crazy, but I won't know what it's like otherwise, right? So your reality and my reality will be different at the start. And I was just set on making this work. So I started sharing my story with people. And through that, someone had recommended a consultant to me. And I didn't know what a consultant was after the whole infertility journey I had just went through. So I sent my money to this woman in Florida, sight unseen, didn't really think about the fact that there might be others I should talk to. And I put all my trust in her. And 9 months to the day that I first had my conversation with her, I became a mom. And I just want to throw in that today happens to be Valentine's Day that we're recording. And today is my family day. It's the day that we became a legal family. So I went from not having a Valentine for so long in my life to having a forever Valentine.
Wow, that's so special. I love that.
Yeah.
When we talked before this conversation, one thing that I want to acknowledge, and I think it's super important, is all adoption starts with a lot, I think, of pain and trauma. There is, and that's on both sides. There's a loss of a parent. There's the loss of the idea of having your own child. There's a loss of infertility, possibly. There's a loss on the parent side and of this extreme dream of having your family and however you can make that happen and what that looks like for you. And it was a journey for me as well. And I did all the things you're talking about. I didn't get married till I was 35, 36 years old. I went through infertility because I was an older mom, going to be an older mom. So high risk pregnancy, went through all the tests and even the tests. And I don't know about you, but But the tests are extremely invasive, and it's a lot to take as a woman to have somebody poking around in you all the time. And
Legs and stirrups. Yep.
I don't know how many people are walking through as this is happening, from resident to whatever. And it's all out there for you. And there's multiple specialists and all of that. And it's really a vulnerable time for a woman. And when you find out that you can, our society is kind of built on this idea. Even the Bible says that women are for making babies. And I felt like my body had failed me. I felt like there was so much that went into that.
Yeah.
And it was a grieving process. There's no question about what you're talking about. So when you come to adoption, you've been on a journey already. Like that is already a journey for you. So what drives that passion for adoption with others that you have now? Obviously, you have a very personal story, but why help others?
First of all, after I went through my journey and I really learned what adoption was and what it entailed and that emotional roller coaster that we talked about a second ago, I became this magnet for other people after I adopted, and they saw how quickly it happened for me. And people started asking me. I was so passionate about helping other people make it a little bit easier for them. And then I would counsel them on the back end. So as they were starting the process, and all of them used my consultant, I would be counseling them on the back end because I had just gone through it.
I think when you share your story, people are very interested of how you got to adoption. And I remember it was like 488 days of Zeke being in foster care before he was adopted.
Wow.
And I remember every day wondering, will I get to keep this baby or not? And my tribe being very invested in this baby staying with me and becoming his forever mom. However, it is a story. People are attached to you. And the fact that you've been through it, I have a lot of people ask me about it. And I am not as free to give all of my opinions because I don't want to sway anybody. Or our journey was very hard. And so when we talk about it, I don't want to like scare people off either, because it is very hard. Especially from foster care. I think private, there is.
Yeah, it's a whole different.
But from foster care, especially, because foster care's whole point is to reunite families. So there's a whole nother level of it in that. But I love that you became this adoption like heroine in this and tried to help people navigate the process. When was the light bulb moment, or was there a moment, or we call them sparks around here, where you said, why am I not being the consultant?
There was a definite spark. And I call it drinking the Kool-Aid also. I would send everybody to my consultant. And I was somebody, by the way, I was working in the nonprofit industry, specifically running events. And my niche was working with high-powered women. I was working day in and day out with all of these women who really inspired me. I always had this dream of, one day I want to be in the lead seat, right? I want to be at the top. I want to run my own company. So I had always had this entrepreneurial spirit for years. After I realized that I put over $30,000 into the consultant's pocket that I used, that's when the spark went off. I had tested it for 2 years also. And I realized, okay, I'm not sick of talking about adoption every day yet. I'm not tired of it, because it could burn you out. And when I realized that, one, I just put a lot of money in her pocket, and two, I'm still interested in helping people and having this conversation on a daily basis, that's when I thought, I want to do this. I want to make this a business. What I did actually was I called up my consultant and I asked her if she wanted to partner. And the best thing happened. She said, I'm not ready yet. Call me back in a year. And I hung up the phone and I said, nope, this is my time. So 10 minutes later, I called her back and I said, I'm going to be your competitor. And if you're willing, I'd love to pick your brain and see if you could help me out a little bit. She said, I've heard this before, but I believe that you'll do it. And so I did it. And she was hesitant to help me, but she did a little bit.
You talk about that element of talking to her and say, I'm going to be your competitor. What are some of the big challenges or lessons that you've learned about business and life through this process of going from an adopter to helping people and now full-on consultant. What were some of the challenges you encountered and lessons you learned along the way? If you can tell yourself, go back 10 years and tell yourself, what are the things you would tell that person?
Yeah, a couple of things come up for me when you say that. Number one is when I first started my business, I was very confident that I could help somebody, but I wasn't confident that someone would look at me and think that, right? Because I had just started. And I remember getting on the phone with those first phone calls with people saying, I know I just started. If you want some other names of other people, I can give you other names too. And something happened one day. It was another single mom, actually. I said that to her and she said to me, Becca, I go by Becca. There's a reason why I called you. I don't need to talk to anyone else. You're the person I want to work with. And so it was actually that prospect who became my client who gave me the confidence to know, you know what? Why am I asking people to call someone else when I know I'm the best person for the job? And I also didn't charge enough from the get-go, which is something I learned way later, is to charge what you feel like you're worth and then up it from there. If people believe in you and if you have the passion that's going to come across, then people will pay because they like you and they trust you. The other, if you would indulge me a little bit longer, I learned that parenting is really hard. And single parenting is really hard. Would I trade it for the world? No. Do I have some advantages that many couples don't have? Absolutely. And no matter what, parenting is really hard. I learned that as an entrepreneur, you're going to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. And this whole idea of a work-life balance, there's really no balance. It's all merged into one. For me, those are some of the lessons I learned. There's more, for sure. You have to be a marketer. You have to know marketing above anything else, no matter what you do.
Everyone is marketing themselves in some way, shape, or form. I say every day, whether you're trying to pitch an idea to your spouse about going on this vacation, or you're trying to convince your parent that you want to do this particular plan.
Yeah.
You are always marketing yourself. And if you have a business idea, you have to be able to express who you serve, why you're the best, and how you can solve the problem, whatever the problem is. Thank goodness for that particular potential customer of yours that said to you, no, stop it. Because I feel like when we all start, we have a little bit of an imposter syndrome.
Totally.
And even after 12 years, there's times, Rebecca, where I still feel like I have imposter syndrome, right? I'm just a person. But I think as I've gotten wiser and more mature and all the things, I now know the value I have. But I think when you're first starting, you feel that, who am I to say this and to charge this? And one of the things I do all the time, it's so funny you say this, is I am always telling my customers, you need to charge more and you deserve it. Stop. You know how much money you're leaving on it.
If you believe in yourself, people will believe in you for sure.
And the service you provide is there a price to that? You're creating a family like that. To me, I feel from the journey I went on, people are willing to pay how much money to freeze eggs, how much money to think about the ways people are already trying to find a family for themselves. The service you provide is creating a family. That's a very important service, and peace of mind along that process, that I'm making the right choices and putting my literal eggs in one basket of something. I think it's really important that people understand the service you provide and the value that provides at the end of the day. So I've gotten to know you a little bit better. I want you to talk a little bit about one highlight along the way that's been something that you're really proud of on your journey to become an entrepreneur, or as the 10 years of being in business. What is the experience or moment or highlight that fuels you along this journey?
The biggest highlight that keeps me going is that we have helped about 400 families thus far, maybe a little more, become a family through adoption. And to open up my Facebook and my Instagram, and my whole feed is just all of these families with their babies and their happiness that they did not start this journey with. And to see that and to get thank you messages, constant, that keeps me going for sure. There's no better feeling. And this is definitely the most difficult industry I've ever worked in. I've never felt more judged in some ways. It's a messy industry. There's a lot of layers to it. When you're talking about women who aren't able to keep their babies for whatever reason, and then people like us who are hopeful families who want babies and who are adopting. There's so many opinions and thoughts and layers, and I've never felt more judged, and I've never felt more like I'm doing such good in the world. But for these families,
for them, it's their entire world. Yeah, that becomes their world for sure.
Yeah. So that's definitely what keeps me going. And I would say also that I'm so happy that I made a career out of my passion. And it didn't happen easy. I was working full time when I started this business. I started by working nights and weekends, but I realized quickly that there was no way I was going to be able to grow this company while I was still working full time for somebody else. I really got into meditation and manifestation and journaling and meditating and all the woo that I love so much. I put a date to the day I would get let go. And I say let go because I couldn't walk away. I needed at least some severance to keep me going while I built my business. And I had been at the company for a while. I manifested getting let go, and I wrote down a specific day. And I have to tell you, it was that day that I got let go. It was that day. People thought I was crazy. And they told me, Becca, get a side job. You can't. You just adopted. I still had a little baby, like a 2-year-old. And I was like, oh, heck no. I have this business that I want to grow. And if I get another job, it won't put the fire underneath me that I need to grow this business.
You had a big fire in your belly because you had a baby to take care of. You had to do it, right?
I did.
Failing was not an option.
Yep. Yep. And as I grew over these last 10 years, every single time I hire somebody on my team, I am scared to death. And as an entrepreneur, I wake up scared every day. But that's the fire that keeps me going because I have to not only provide for my family, but I have a team of people that work with me that I have to help provide for as well. Every time I make a big move, it's scary. And I have that woman, that prospect that called me and said she believed in me. She is constantly in my ear. I will never forget her. And we're still friends on Facebook to this day.
Does she know you were that for you?
I think I have told her. I should tell her again, but yes, I used to tell her. And the thing is, she actually didn't end up adopting through me. A whole bunch of weird things happened in her family, and she actually ended up adopting a family member, actually. But she started the process with me, and she was my first client.
I think that sometimes you need those voices to carry you through some of those hard times. I was just talking to my assistant this morning. Rebecca, you talk about manifestation and all those things about how it's hard to be a business owner. There's a lot of pressure on us to do all the things perfectly, to make the clients happy, to make our team happy, and also make us happy at the end of the day too. That's the whole reason why we did this, was because it brings us joy. We can't forget that it's bringing us joy. And as business owners, it's a lot. The payroll and inventory and all the things you have to deal with operationally, and you have to mentor your staff, and you have to there's just so much you have to do, and you're pulled in all the different directions. Add a whole nother layer of your family on top of that, and having to manage the family and all that. It's an immense amount of pressure for especially women business owners to constantly perform and meet those things. I was just had this conversation before this call, and I even said to her, I want to make sure that message is in my marketing, because I understand how hard it is for business owners. And if I can take marketing off the table and not have to worry about that particular piece, that gives them more mental space to do the other things they need to do.
It's true.
And a lot of the planning we do helps them get out of the weeds, look forward. This is where I want to go. And then lets them go back in the weeds while we do the thing. And occasionally they get up and course correct or whatever, but it allows them a freedom. That's what I want my clients to value me for, is allowing them the headspace and I have to worry about that particular aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I think having someone like you during that process of adoption allows them the headspace to focus on having the family and what they want and all those things. You're giving them peace of mind in that process the same way, like taking that portion off the table so they don't have to stress. There's enough to have to think about in the process.
Yeah.
So what are the emerging trends in adoption? I always ask this to everybody I talk to, but I feel like making a family is the same whether it was 200 years ago or now, but I'm sure there's more legal and even financial investments that are required now than ever. So
it's getting way more expensive. That has to do with just the costs rising in this world for everything, right? If you think about an expectant mom who might be homeless and might need a hotel in Orlando, Florida, let's just say, the cost of that alone is so astronomical that it has driven the cost of adoption way up. So when you're looking at adopting privately, you're looking at anywhere between $45,000 to $65,000. And most people don't have that sitting in their pockets. So there are ways to work through that and get help. That's an unfortunate trend, and I hope it levels out a little bit more or maybe even comes down. Online technology. There are more spaces being built online for expectant parents and hopeful adopted parents to match. At the same time, it opens itself up. It lends itself to more potential scammers. And so I've seen way more fall throughs, like disrupted adoptions happening, where you will match with an expectant mom. And maybe after the baby's born, maybe before the baby's born, she changes her mind, which is her right. And there are some people who do that just because they really, truly can't go through with it. And there are some people who do that because they know they were going to get supported financially throughout. I've seen some more of that happening, unfortunately. There's more adoption reform happening, which is a great thing. So there are some organizations doing wonderful work on trying to get more laws passed, more accountability had over the whole industry, and things like that are happening too from a reform standpoint, from national, federal standpoint, which is great.
What are some of the things that are getting reformed? How are they changing that?
Some things are, for instance, one of the laws that just passed in California is that adoption facilitators are no longer legal and attorneys can't facilitate placements. So you can only work with a licensed adoption agency to facilitate an adoption, meaning somebody who's working with birth moms, adoptive parents, and putting that together. So facilitators used to do that, but they were not licensed. So they are no longer legal. And attorneys also used to be able to facilitate that. You can only use attorneys now for the legal portion of adoption, not for matching. So that's one thing. And they're trying to get that passed throughout the country so that there are no unlicensed entities facilitating a match. Another thing is the fees that are allowed for an expectant mom. So should there be a cap on it? Should there not? I know Florida right now is looking at capping that, which is great on one end. And on the other end, what are you supposed to do when an expectant mom is homeless, has no place to live, but the cheapest hotel is $100 a night? There are definite issues that come along with trying to reform adoption and adoption laws, but at least the conversations are being had to be able to make it supportive across the board for everyone in a way that's, I don't know if I want to use the word fair, but that makes the most sense. In hospitals, for instance, there are many hospitals, and I have this going on right now, where a hospital worker is trying to convince the expectant mom not to place her baby. That is not the role of a hospital worker, right? There's reform happening right now where education would be required of all hospital workers as to what adoption is, what the process is, and what their role is when they know an adoption is happening, which is not to convince one way or another. So things like that to reform and get good practices happening all across the country are being worked on right now.
That's good that the people that are supposed to be at the table are at the table talking about the things that matter. So you serve two sides of the story. You just talked about the birth moms and the families that want to adopt. I'm going to ask marketing question. How do you get in front of the birth moms and how do you get in front of the families?
I want to make it very clear. I do not work with birth moms and I do not facilitate matches. I help guide the hopeful parents so that they can get in front of expectant moms. So they're not a birth mom until they've given birth. So do you
partner with an organization that does?
So I network with agencies and attorneys all over the country.
Okay.
And I will talk with them, find out all the information about them. What are all their financials? How do they work with expectant moms and support them? What are their numbers? How many adoptions do they do in a year? How many fall throughs do they have? How many families are they working with? And then from that, I can take that information and the criteria of the families that we are working with and try to match them up with the agencies that make the most sense for them and have them sign up with those agencies. Now, our whole idea, our whole philosophy is that I think it's best to be in front of as many places as you can be to have the most exposure, which will hopefully help you adopt quicker. So what I mean is we have our families sign up with multiple agencies at once, and all of these agencies have very low upfront fees. So instead of going with one agency that requires $20,000 upfront, we are saying, why not spread out and sign up with 3 different agencies that are $1,000 upfront and then pay the bulk of it later instead of at the beginning? There are definitely pros and cons to both, but that's our philosophy, that's our model, and that's how we guide our families so that they're able to connect with an expectant mom as quickly as possible. And then we help them vet situations. We help prepare them once they're matched for that first phone call they have with an expectant mom. We help them prepare for the hospital visit and all the different things that they need to know and expect. We even tell them that there might be a hospital worker that that isn't an adoption advocate or a supporter that might try to talk you all out of it.
It's really complex.
Most of the time that doesn't happen, but they have to be prepared.
And there's so many layers to the process. So
definitely,
it just navigating the whole thing. And I always come back to my own story because that's what I know, right? And I wish there was somebody who would have told me to do it this way. This is the best way. But there's no guarantees in any of it. That's the hardest part.
There isn't. We have a huge percentage of our families, over 90% of our families, will have a successful match and adopt within a year. And there's still some that don't. We can't guarantee anything. We can only tell you what's worked for us in the past and support them the best way that we possibly can.
10% is pretty darn good, though.
Proud of it.
All the things that are involved. Yes.
Yep.
When you're looking at families, you're trying to connect with them because that's who you serve.
Yeah.
How are you connecting with hopeful families? How do you market to them?
A lot of it is word of mouth. I remember when I first started and all I had was Facebook. Instagram wasn't even a thing 10 years ago, really. So I introduced my business on Facebook and I had all of my friends share it on their pages. And sure enough, I started getting clients. Oh, I saw it on page. I saw it on page. And I started getting more and more calls that led to clients. I remember when I got my first 3 clients, I thought, oh my God, I've made it. And from that day, social media has still been the biggest driver of families that have become clients. Facebook and Instagram are really the 2 biggest. Now that I've been doing this for 10 years and have helped about 400 families adopt, a lot of referrals from our past clients and also from the agencies we work with.
Do you have repeat clients?
Yeah, actually we do.
Oh,
And that's always really fun when they come back. And
yeah. I love this business. I love what you do. I love how
Thank
you help
you.
families. I
Thanks.
am a proponent of your family is what you make it and not necessarily always blood and all the things. I thank you for those insights.
Yeah.
Our next little section of the podcast is called the lightning round. It is 7 rapid fire questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
Promise to be kind. It really helps uncover your favorite insights and tools and inspirations. And if somebody is starting a business or is seasoned and is just needing some inspo, these are great things that can maybe inject a little bit of that into their day. So what is your favorite way to connect and network?
Instagram.
What is your favorite business or marketing book?
I have 2.
Okay.
2 Weeks Notice by Amy Porterfield. And
Amy.
I do too. She's taught me a lot. And then $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy.
I have not read that one. I'll have to check it out.
He was a game changer for me last year.
Okay. What is your favorite business tool or app that you use every day?
Slack.
What is your favorite marketing tactic?
Consistency.
What is your favorite source of inspiration?
It's what we talked about before. When other people tell me that I have inspired them, it makes me keep pushing. And also, I think it's people who speak out for their truth, which has been happening a lot these days, but I'm always in awe of people that are unabashedly themselves and will continue speaking up for what they believe.
Who is your favorite entrepreneur to follow?
Jasmine Star, lately Lindsay Pinchuk of Dear Found Her.
Perfect. That was the 7 questions. You totally survived.
Awesome. Whoosh.
So the next segment kind of leads from that, though. It's called the Blaze Forward segment. And sometimes entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs don't know where to start that next thing, that spark or ignite the next step. Is there something that you would suggest or you would say to somebody who is looking for some inspiration or to do something?
We took each step of my process and I clearly wrote down what that entailed, and then I gave it a name. My overall process is the adoption roadmap, and each step of the roadmap has a name to it. And when I started doing that, the feedback I got from people on the other line was, I love how you so clearly spelled it out. It's really easy to understand. I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is the thing. And it worked. So I would say, really know what your process is, put a name to it, and make it your own.
It is hard, but the more you do it, the more practice you get, the more you find your voice, the more authentic you become, the more I think you become relatable and people will find you interesting and want to work with you. So great advice all the way.
At RG Adoption on IG, at RG Adoption on Facebook, RG Adoption Consulting. My website is rgadoptionconsulting.com. And those are the 3 main places.
Wonderful. I'm deeply grateful for people who work in this space, people who are social workers that care about children. I'm so glad there are people like you championing the cause out there. As we come to the end of the episode, I just want to let you know I'm thankful to you for sharing your insights and experience with all of us. And through your work at RG Adoption Consulting and your personal journey as a single mom through transracial and open adoption, Rebecca has touched the lives of countless individuals and families, offering hope and guidance along the way. Remember, adoption is not just about expanding families. It's about creating love and belonging and endless possibilities. If you're considering adoption or seeking support in your adoption journey, reach out to Rebecca and her team at RG Adoption Consulting. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Until next time, may your hearts be open and your dreams of parenthood realized. Take care and stay tuned for our next episode.